It's You Had to Ask, the show where I answer your questions. Am I in focus this week, unlike last week? Am I demonstrating a baseline of competence when it comes to the production of the video? Good. Anyway, it's the show where I answer your questions, and the first question this week comes from Ahoyerno, who says, both Trump and Sanders trying to get the nomination from outside, and both seems like they could pull it off or come very close to nominations. Brokered conventions, abuse of superdelegates, it seems that all the pieces are set for some serious internal trouble in both parties. Do you think any of the major parties could collapse, and what would that mean for the country? Are the parties flexible enough to change with the tides or strong enough to resist outside influence? Is it all just hot air? I don't know. I mean, despite all of the sort of ominous predictions that some people are offering, if Trump doesn't get the nomination, what would happen to the Republican Party? Or if Sanders doesn't get the nomination or is perceived as not being treated fairly, what would happen to the Democratic Party? I don't think anything major like that is going to happen this time around. I don't foresee any catastrophic, split of one of the two major parties. But it could definitely happen at some point. I actually think that there's a split like that has been brewing in the Republican Party for a very, very, very long time. The Republican Party is sort of cobbled together this group, this series of groups, just a whole bunch of people that are very, very loosely related politically. You have the sort of fiscal conservatives, you have the very hardcore social conservatives, you have people that are sort of in Trump's base who are coming out and voting for him, but then you also have people who are Republican or who identify as conservative who are just horribly embarrassed by Donald Trump and would never vote for him in a million years. And even a few people who are saying, despite the fact that they are lifelong Republicans and consider themselves conservatives, that they would rather vote for Hillary than vote for Trump. So there's a splintering that has been threatening to happen in the Republican Party for some time. And there's something similar going on in the Democratic Party as well. Again, it's a long-standing thing. There are many, many Democrats who feel like the party has become too centrist for them, that the Democratic Party is not nearly liberal and leftist enough. And so there are those tensions there as well, but not nearly as pronounced as in the Republican Party. But do I think there will be a split anytime soon? No, I really don't. But it wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing. I have said before that I think one of the best things that could happen to American politics is for there, instead of two major parties, for there to be 3 or 4 or 5. Not only would that allow parties to better represent their constituencies, but it would also sort of mandate cooperation and compromise, where you don't have two major monolithic parties, just one able to sort of overwhelm the other. You would have to form coalitions. You would have to form agreements and cooperate with one another to get anything done. So I think it would be a good thing to have multiple major parties instead of just the two, but I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon. Patrick Dodds, Steve, do you have any favorite short-lived TV series? My personal favorites are, predictably, Firefly and Police Squad. What say you? Nowhere Man. Nowhere Man is one of my favorite shows ever, and it only lasted 1 season. And for those of you who aren't familiar with it, it was a show that debuted, I believe, the fall after the debut of the UPN network. It was one of the first original series on UPN. It started after the start of UPN in January of that year. It debuted in September, and it's still one of my favorite shows. Actually, I have it on DVD. I have it on DVD within arm's reach of this video, which was not planned. It just happens to be over there. Right there it is. I love Nowhere Man. It began my now decades-long love affair with Bruce Greenwood. He has long been one of my favorite actors because he was the star of Nowhere Man. He is a fantastic actor. I love to see him in everything I've ever seen him in. And it's sort of it's like The Prisoner or The Fugitive. It has a little bit of X-Files mixed in. It's about a guy who had his identity just completely stolen from him. Like he goes into the bathroom at a restaurant with his wife, smokes a cigarette, walks back out of the restaurant, walks back out of the bathroom. His wife is gone. Nobody knows who he is. Nobody admits to knowing his name. He tries to call home. His phone number has been changed. He goes to his house. His wife is married to someone else and claims to not know who he is. And that's just the beginning. And it's just an awesome show and a really fun show, and it only lasted one season, which in a way is kind of good because I don't know how that premise could have been sustained much longer than that. But for the 20-something episodes that we have of Nowhere Man, it's just about a perfect little show, and I really, really love it. So that would obviously be at the top of my list for favorite short-lived TV series. Old Comic One, in the last You Had to Ask, you talked about society becoming more secular. It seems to me that there is a corresponding trend of religious adherents becoming more fanatical and dogmatic. Is this bias on my part, or have you noticed the same thing? I think it might be more a case of the people who are already quite fundamentalist are just becoming more set in their ways and more determined not to change, and are a little bit more likely to lash out and to be a little angrier about the situation because society in general is becoming more secular, and because I think religious adherents in general over the long term are becoming more ecumenical, more pluralistic, more tolerant of disagreement, less fundamentalist, more liberal and moderate and modernist in their interpretations of their faiths. I think that trend is upsetting the people who are very much, hardcore fundamentalists, and, treat their scriptures with a very literalist interpretation and have a very hard-line view of their rules and regulations of their faith. And I think those people are getting angry and are feeling persecuted and are feeling left behind. And on that last one, I agree with him. They are being left behind. Their versions of their religions are slowly but surely being left behind, which I think is a good thing. So no, I don't think religious adherents in general are becoming more fundamentalist, but I do think that the fundamentalists are becoming much more hardcore and much more vocal about it than they have been perhaps in the past, because of the increase in secularism and the increase in liberal and moderate versions of their faiths. Brian Gibson, have you ever looked into the concept of cultural appropriation? If so, what are your thoughts? To me, it seems as though the idea that people from one culture should be barred from making use of the ideas, styles, rituals, etc. of another is a call for segregation and cultural stratification stagnation, but I may be missing nuance that reveals a reasonable kernel in there somewhere. It's not that people are saying that the culture you're born into is the only culture you can ever be influenced by, or the only culture that you can ever adopt the customs of or celebrate or anything like that. Cultural appropriation is when a dominant culture exploits a subservient culture, or a marginalized culture, when a privileged culture exploits or borrows from an underprivileged culture. That is cultural appropriation. And that power dynamic has to be in there. It's not just one culture being influenced by another, or a person from one culture being influenced by an outside culture and adopting their customs or whatever. It has to be, to count as cultural appropriation, as defined by most people who use that concept and try to raise awareness about that concept and consider cultural appropriation to be a bad thing. It has to have that power dynamic. It has to be the appropriation of a marginalized culture by people in a privileged culture. And if that power dynamic isn't going on, then it isn't really cultural appropriation. Jeff Killer Heisenberg. I haven't a serious question in a while, so here goes. In light of what happened to Microsoft's chatbot being turned into a Nazi through web interaction, do you think that the internet has taken a distinctly rightward turn in recent years? And if so, to what do you attribute this? I think my answer to this is going to be a little bit like the answer I gave to Honest John's question earlier. It's not so much that the internet, that the people on the internet are becoming more conservative or more to the right politically. I think it's just that the people who are on the right politically are becoming a lot more vocal and a lot angrier. I think if you look at the things that people on that side of things are posting on the internet, people who are white supremacists or who are anti-feminists or Trump supporters or anti-immigrant, anti-Islam, whatever. They're all very angry, and they're very threatened. They're very thin-skinned and very insecure. And when they see things moving in what they feel is a threatening direction, when they see pluralism and liberalism and social justice beginning to make inroads into areas that they have previously felt comfortable in or felt in control of, they get very angry and they get very afraid and they lash out. And I think there's a lot of lashing out happening on the internet right now, on Twitter and other forms of social media. People who sort of fall into those categories, feeling attacked and feeling threatened and wanting to push back. So they're very vocal, but I don't think that necessarily means that they represent a majority of people on the internet. It's just that they produce a lot of content on the internet because they are so motivated right now and they're so angry and agitated. But I don't think it means that people on the internet in general have taken a rightward turn. I think it just means that the people of that ilk, people who think that way, have just been saying a lot more. And that's what happened to that chatbot. It's not that the internet is full of Nazis. It's just that the Nazis that are on the internet, to take just one group as an example, have been making a lot of noise. Case against Faith 1. Hey Steve, in your critical review of Batman v Superman, you condemned the guidance of Superman's mother to be a hero or not, up to him. Well, what would you, as Superman's adoptive parent, give as better guidance? Assuming it was that he should be a hero, please include practical advice as to how much, how often, in what cases to use his powers for the betterment of others. There are always fires, crashes, robberies, rapes, and murders in the world 24/7. How would he even decide which crisis to go handle while other people are dying? I think the goal with Superman isn't to try to fix everything or to save everyone. The goal is to help. To me, that's the whole point of Superman. That's what makes him a heroic character, is that he has power and he uses it to help. Now, obviously, yes, Superman cannot save everyone, and I'm sure there would be times, if Superman were a real person, where he would be faced with this terrible dilemma of, I hear a fire alarm over here, and I hear gunshots over here, like, what do I do? Who do I save? I'm sure that is something that would just eat him up, and would probably have a very negative effect on him psychologically if he would let that sort of thing get to him. But just because he can't save everybody doesn't mean that he shouldn't try to save anybody. Doesn't mean that he shouldn't try to make a positive impact where he can. And even though the rest of us don't have superpowers, we all face this problem in our everyday lives. Even if it takes something good that most people can do, right? Like donating to charity. Okay, let's say you have a couple of bucks left over at the end of the month and you want to donate it to charity. Well, there are countless charities to donate to. You got 20 extra bucks and you want to give it to a charity. Who do you give it to? There might be 10 different organizations that all appeal to you roughly equally, and you can't decide who to give the 20 bucks to. Maybe you decide to give a few bucks to each one. Or maybe you decide to split the money in half and give it to two, or however you make that decision. It could be a very difficult decision for you to do. But I don't think there's a scenario where the right decision is to just not give the money to anybody. And I think what Superman's parents tell him in Man of Steel and Batman v Superman is, yeah, it's okay to not give the money to anybody. You should allow yourself that option. You are a person who is uniquely gifted and has the power to help people, but if you just don't feel like helping people, that is a morally acceptable choice for you. I think that's the mistake that his parents made. And I think it shows to me a very deeply flawed understanding of the character, that the filmmakers would allow Superman's parents to give him that message, to teach him that lesson, and to view that as acceptable. So would I be able, if I were Superman's adoptive parent, to tell him exactly what he should do, to guide him specifically and say, okay, now if you're faced with a dilemma, son, and you can either save this person or that person, then you should save this person. That's not the kind of parenting that I would be capable of giving. I don't think that's the kind of parenting that is demanded in the case of Superman. What's demanded is empathy and interest in the well-being of others, concern for the well-being of others, and a sense of responsibility about your own power and how you use it and what you should use it to do. It doesn't mean that Superman's never going to have moral dilemmas. It doesn't mean Superman is never going to fall short. It doesn't mean Superman is going to have to save everybody, or even that he should try to save everybody. Alphonse rides again. Steve, with regards to the whole ritual and tradition thing, what do you think of atheists practicing established religion but just not believing? I was raised Catholic, and I was in Ireland recently, but the day after the Brussels attacks, I did have this strange urge to go to a church and see if being in that sort of environment, practicing silly but culturally significant ritual with a sense of history, might help to allay my fear and anxiety. To my surprise, it did. Do you think it's possible to be a fully fledged non-believer and still appreciate what religion has always offered in tough times? And how should I feel as an atheist about my brief relapse into religious practice? Well, I don't think you should feel bad about it. It seems like it helped, right? It helped allay your anxiety, so I don't see how there's anything wrong with it. You know, there was a really good video that I recommended actually a few weeks ago, or maybe a few months ago. Now it's hard to keep track, but it was on Atheist's channel, and he made a video in response to the famous/infamous exchange last year between Ben Affleck and Sam Harris on Bill Maher's show. And one of the points Atheist makes in that video that is a great point is that not everybody who identifies with a religion does so for rational reasons or evidential reasons or because they were argued into it at some point. Most people probably identify with religion and continue to identify with a particular religion and a particular religious community because of the people and the ritual and the comfort of it and the support that it gives them and the sense of continuity that it gives them in their lives. It connects them not only to the people around them who share that faith and share those same customs and practices, but also to other people throughout history who have done the same thing. It places them in a context that they find rewarding and they find comforting and they find appealing. And there's nothing wrong with that. And there's nothing wrong with an atheist or a non-believer, however you happen to identify yourself, taking some comfort or taking some meaning in those rituals, even if you don't believe in the truth claims of the faith, even if to you it's just metaphor or to you it's just ritual. We conduct all sorts of rituals in our lives that we don't literally believe in the original basis for. You know, we have all sorts of we have holiday celebrations that can be traced back to religious roots that many of us continue to practice, even though we don't believe in the religious beliefs of the people that started those practices. And I think there's nothing wrong with it at all. If you are a former Catholic, a former believer, I guess, in the tenets of Catholicism, and you still occasionally take some comfort or find some value in going to Mass or partaking in some other ritual of your former faith, I don't think there's anything wrong with that at all. And I don't think that you as an atheist need to feel ashamed or like you're betraying something. I don't think it's anything like that at all. I suppose you might say it's inconsistent, but you know what? There are worse things in life than inconsistency. Not everything in your life has to be logically and intellectually consistent in order for you to have a happy, joyful, meaningful life. Nothing wrong with consistency, but a little inconsistency here and there is not going to kill you and doesn't automatically make you a bad person or a dishonest person or whatever. If going to church, even though you're a non-believer, does something for you, gives you something that maybe you wouldn't get somewhere else, then just go for it. And there's no need to be ashamed of it. I do have reasons for shame, though. And you're about to watch one of them now, because it's time for
the lightning round. Rapid fire questions, glib and adequate answers.
Bozo the Skeptical Hermit Crab. Steve, hard shell tacos or soft shell? How many layers? Hot sauce? How hot? Any non-customary filling choices? If so, why? Where do you get yours? How many paper napkins do you normally use when consuming said taco? Do you have more than one taco? If so, how many? Please feel free to elaborate as you deem fit. Have a groovy day. Hard shell tacos, I don't know, what do you think? Maybe 3 layers. You have meat and then maybe some lettuce and then some sauce on top, or like some cheese, sour cream. No non-customary filling choices. Where do I get mine? I mean, there's not really too many great taco places around here in the Hagerstown general area, but I guess like Taco Bell. You know, I know that the purists will hate me for saying that, but Taco Bell is where I usually go. No paper napkins, because napkins are for the weak, and I usually have at least 2. So there you go. Chemistry student, lightning round question. What are your thoughts on heavy metal? I have almost none, because I don't really listen to it. So I have very few, if any, thoughts on heavy metal, other than knowing that it is a genre of music that exists. Lucas Hackett, One Angry Brony. Hey Steve, which Ninja Turtle kicks ass way more? Leonardo, Raphael, Donatello, or Michelangelo? Raphael. I mean, my knowledge of the Ninja Turtles is limited to the first 3 movies, and then a little bit of the cartoon show that I watched here and there when I was a teenager and a kid. And I got the impression that Raphael was the far and away superior ass kicker to the other 3, but I'm sure opinions vary. Radical Bacon, my friend has grown a beard. Can I pet the beard? I'm really interested to see where these "can I pet this" questions are going to go from here. Yes, I think you can if your friend is okay with it. It all comes down to consent. Don't pet someone's beard or anything else without first making sure that they're cool with it. And if they say they're cool with it, then yes, absolutely. Why would you not pet the beard if that's what you want and the other person says it's okay? Live, right? Live. You know, we only get one go round in this crazy world. Pet the beard if you can. Captain Andy. Hi, Steve. What is an atheist movement? Specifically, what niche does an atheist movement fill that a secularist movement or a humanist movement or a skeptic movement or a free thought movement doesn't? That's a really good question and a really good point. I think the atheist movement, a specifically named atheist movement, fills the niche of helping to normalize and remove the stigma of atheism as an identity, and I think that's important. But other than that, yeah, I think you're right. I personally feel much more drawn to humanism than to atheism as a movement, because I think humanism incorporates all the other stuff that I think is important besides, not being religious. So yeah, it's a really good point. Precambrian Lullaby. I have to ask, what are some animated stories that you just absolutely love? Old, new, doesn't matter. Not in a nostalgia kind of way, but more of a wonderful cinema kind of way. What has to be an animated film that has grabbed you and won't let go? I think I've mentioned them a few times before in older videos. There are 2 anime films that I just adore. One is Grave of the Fireflies, which is just wrenching, just so heartbreaking and beautiful. And the second is Wings of Oniamas, which is a great feature about a fledgling space program, which is just terrific. And I love the Iron Giant. I love the Iron Giant. So I would name those 3 off the top of my head as animated films that just really, really love. Francois Lacombe. Hi, Steve. I just watched your Patreon hangout for this month, and it leaves no ambiguity as to the cinematic pile of crap you feel the latest Batman v Superman movie is. But there's another DC universe out there, less grandiose, but much more enjoyable. I'm talking about the 4 TV series currently playing: The Flash, Arrow, Legends of Tomorrow, and Supergirl. What, if anything, do you think about those? Well, I've only seen a little tiny bit of The Flash and about roughly half of this first season of Supergirl, and I really like it. I mean, I haven't had a chance to watch any of Arrow. I haven't had a chance to watch any of Legends of Tomorrow, but I've seen a little bit of The Flash and more, but not all, of Supergirl, and I really, really love it. I think it's so much more fun than the current DC movie universe. And I mean, they incorporate classic bits from the comics, like the existence of multiple worlds, like the Earth 2 stuff that the Flash has gotten into, that sort of facilitated the Flash's crossover with Supergirl recently, which I thought was a great episode. I just loved. So what little I've seen of it, the DC TV universe that they have built is great, and is much more up my alley than the really grim, violent, pointless cinematic universe they've been doing. TazB12. Hey Steve, I've not seen Batman v Superman, but I watched your review and listened to your late seating review with Jason. Based on that, I want to ask you the eternal question, who would win in a fight? Christopher Reeve Superman or Henry Cavill Superman? Well, and then in the complete question, which I edited for this, TazB12 explains a scenario where Henry Cavill's Superman would win, basically because he's a bloodthirsty murderer who doesn't care about other people. And while Christopher Reeve's Superman was busy trying to save people, Henry Cavill would take advantage of that and would basically murder him, and then go off and kick up his feet and read the Fountainhead, which is probably what would happen. But if I were writing it, Christopher Reeve's Superman would win, because I just don't think I'm capable as a human being of writing a story about Christopher Reeve's Superman fighting Henry Cavill's Superman, where Christopher Reeve's Superman would lose. It just wouldn't happen. But he wouldn't kill him. Superman, played by Christopher Reeve, would never kill Henry Cavill's Superman. He would banish him to the Phantom Zone, or he would get rid of him in a sort of ambiguous way, like he got rid of General Zod at the end of Superman 2, by just sort of throwing him into a pit. Not explicitly murdering him with his bare fucking hands, but just sort of, kicking him off screen and going, there, he's gone. Something like that. That's what I would do. And Christopher Reeve, of course, Christopher Reeve Superman would win. Hey, that's it for the questions, everybody. Before I go, it's time for the shout-out. And the shout-out this week goes to the YouTube channel of GSRC Albany, which is the channel of the Gender and Sexuality Resource Center of the University of Albany. And even if you're not a student at the University of Albany, which I suspect many of you are not, you can still enjoy the content on this YouTube channel. They have a couple of videos up at this point. It's a new channel. They just started uploading content. They only have a few dozen subscribers, but there's a video on Feminism 101, and there's a video on a brief history of the transgender movement. And both of them are short. They're 5 or 6 minutes long. They're informative and fun and well presented and really, really good stuff. And hopefully indicative of future content to come from this channel. So if you care about gender and sexuality issues, if you care about trans issues or LGBT rights in general, or if you care about women's rights and you're looking for maybe a new channel to watch, to look for new content from, I would suggest checking out the GSRC Resource Center, the GSRC Albany YouTube channel, because there's not much there yet, but it's very promising. And what they have so far is very good. And it's nice to see this sort of thing on YouTube, because fuck knows we need more of it. And I also want you to check out the Lemme Listen podcasts, which I am honored to be a small part of. The Lemme Listen podcasts are produced by my pal Jason Harding, aka Jason with a D. And there are 3 of them. There is Let Me Finish, which Jason co-hosts with Finite Atticus, which is hilarious. There is American Monsters and How to Destroy Them, the improv comedy podcast that is a cross between Coast to Coast AM and Twin Peaks. It's just hilarious. And you can listen to the entire first season right now if you want. You can binge listen to the whole thing as we wait for season 2 to begin. And then there is Late Seating, the movie review podcast that Jason co-hosts with me, where we review classic films, we give them a fresh review, we summarize them and make fun of them, and then decide whether we think they deserve the reputation that they have, for good or for bad. Our most recent episode was a review of Howard the Duck, which went up last week. You can check that out. You can check out our bonus review of Batman v Superman. You can check out all of our past reviews and all of the episodes of all of the Lemme Listen podcasts by going to LemmeListenPodcasts.com. And boy, I wish you would. That would be just super. That's it for me, everybody. I am out of here for the week. I want to remind you, as always, to leave a comment on this video asking me your question for next time. You can ask me anything about anything. Nothing is too serious. Nothing is too silly. I will answer as many of your questions as I possibly can next time. So until next time, take care, everybody. Hey folks, one more thing. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, I hope you'll like it and share it and subscribe to this channel if you're not subbed already. I also hope you'll consider helping me to make more videos like this one by supporting this channel through Patreon. You can go to patreon.com/Steve Shives to become a patron. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.